Thank you, Chip. That was beautiful. This is not an advertisement. It's just a sticker I put on it so I wouldn't get it confused with other people's.
Raise the microphone up, please.
How's that? Oh. We're going to begin with a responsive reading. And I'll read the first part and then you read the part in italics. I'd also like to welcome you all here. And just say how excited I am to be able to speak to you this morning. This reading is called We Need One Another. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to be our best selves.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
And we need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
All right, thank you. What do we do next? Okay. I should know that. I've been attending these services for decades, and I just come up here and my mind goes completely blank. Okay, so please stand as you are able, and we're going to sing hymn number 1053.
Thank you, song leader. Please join with me for the chalice lighting. The words are on the screens behind us. It's from the Oberlin Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for one another, and faith in ourselves. Also to be welcoming to whomever we meet, and kind to all living creatures. So gather round this light of hope as we share this time together.
Jonathan, would you please light the chalice?
And while he's doing that, if Lynn McCann would please come up and light the BIPOC candles, please read along with me. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. And now, if our choir will please come up and grace us with this gorgeous music.
Good morning. I'm Jim Swanson. My wife and I have been members here for 6 years now, I believe. And you'll notice I'm wearing a stole. No, I'm not a minister. Although I grew up in Fairmont, Minnesota, in the Lutheran church, and went to a Lutheran college and thought I had a call to be a Lutheran minister. But in my sophomore year, I discovered that it was a wrong number. So instead, I became an English and American Studies teacher instead of a preacher. And it was really a very good choice. And another reason I'm wearing a stole today is because of our choir. We have our stoles as an adornment. And that leads me to suggest that all of you beautiful voices out there come join us, because I hear you every Sunday, and when Ian gets us singing, and with the rounds that we do, 4-part harmony and everything, everybody sings. We got a singing congregation. I'm the only tenor except for Michael when he comes here and joins me on Sunday. Thank you, Michael. He used to sing opera, So I'm very, very thankful to him. And we have a great conductor, and certainly, we really enjoy it. So please join us Wednesday night at 6:30. We'd love to have you. How many have ever sung tenor? Okay. Well, last week, Walter reminded me we only have 5 minutes to give this testimony. So I've had to cut out a few things here. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that I love it here. When I approach this building on Sunday morning and I see Tracy and Randy out there greeting new people and helping get oriented, and then the greeters are there smiling, I love that, and Sandy and Margaret are in there getting ready with the coffee for the cookies afterwards. It's a real delight. And then I hear the music in the background. Today is Chip Prince. Thank you, Chip. And Laura, thank you so much. And thank you for leading us in song. I appreciate that. And there's always a very strong message here. Our worship assistant, today it's Bryna, reminds us of our 8 principles. We believe in the worth and dignity of every human being, and that covers it. All of the other things under it talk to that. And I really, really love that. It makes me feel that this is my home. I feel happy here. I feel challenged. I feel compassion. I feel energetic. I feel useful. And that's what we should be here, useful. All of us. We are all really good-hearted, well-meaning, good-minded people who, as Ian said last week, do our very best, and yet we know we can do better. So let's make sure that we do better. This is a pledge drive, but our pledge drive is not only for money, it's for time and for talent. And I see our 7 principles acted out in all of our committees. There are so many committees that you can be part of, and please see if you can join one. Jonathan just talked about our needs for each other. We do. Our care committee makes sure that people who are suffering get the attention that they need and some kind of solace for whatever kind of struggles they're going through. We have this tech community. Look what they've been able to do for us every Sunday morning. They're great. Thank you, tech committee. And for the people at home, we really appreciate all of that they have done. And our social events committee that 2 weeks ago had chili cook-off, wasn't that fun? And last fall, the auction, which raises money and we have a great time doing that. And our Social Justice Committee that bring in charitable organization speakers many, many times that we support with our time and our money. And we certainly enjoy that. And now this is election year, and the social justice is going to be hoping that more people get involved in bringing out the vote for the candidates of our choice. So please be involved in that. You know, I also really enjoy on the first Friday of every month going to the men's breakfast that we have at Don and Sweet Sue's. It's really fun. It's great. And I do have to say, too, that there is some really good time for entertainment here. I'm on the board of the S2S2S plays, and we're having our next play on the 23rd and the 24th of this month. And we'd really like to have you come. It's right here on our stage, readings, actors, lights, sound, and props, everything. It's good. Please come and enjoy it. We really would like to have you here. So, that's over. I've already said that. Okay, so, and what I think is also very important, as you could tell, the choir today sang a Jewish number. We support people of every faith and tradition, Jewish, Native American, former Lutherans and Catholics. You know, we're here because we know that these 8 principles that you see here before the service on the screen, and they're also on the back of your bulletin, are the things that we believe in, that we support, that makes us active for the betterment of our church, ourselves, and the world. And this is Super Bowl Sunday, which means that we've got to hit a winner. And the winner is reaching our budget for this year. That's the winning touchdown. So I'd like to say, go, U-U-C-O-D. With me, go, U-U-C-O-D. Once more, go, U-U-C-O-D. And thank you very much.
And now, if you'll join with me for a moment of silence, put your hands in your lap, take a deep breath, and just listen to the words. Amid all the noise in our lives, let's take a moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who brought us warmth and love, and to give thanks for the gift of life. We know we are on a pilgrimage here for but just a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here and now to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on earth. And collectively, let us all say, Amen. And now, if you will join me for our hymns for meditation, Spirit of Life and Fuente de Amor.
Oh, in the wind.
This sermon is in two parts. I'm going to talk about shame and community, and then I'm going to talk about writing and publishing. Writing and publishing. All right. Bullying is an important part of this discussion, but I am going to spare you that because I would hate for a beautiful morning like this to degenerate into politics. And I don't think I could talk about bullying without talking about politics at this point. So I'm not even going to mention it. Okay. Shame is a painful emotion caused by consciousness of guilt, shortcomings, or impropriety. Though is rarely acknowledged or even recognized by the person experiencing it, it is pivotal in our lives. It seems to be associated with Catholicism, possibly because of the idea of original sin and the practice of confession. Comedian David Steinberg used to joke. He would say, "I'm Jewish and my wife is Catholic. I do the guilt and she does the shame." So I always like that. Community. Community is described as a unified body of individuals. Most of us are born with a need to be in groups, in couples, family, cliques, schools, or a church such as this one. Our church is a community, as we've said over and over again, and we are unified by our belief in the 8 principles, and we agree to disagree about everything else. I think that's a brief description of it. We may belong to a smaller community within the church, such as the choir or sacred grounds, who are the people who are responsible for making the land around the church so beautiful. Shame occurs when we break the laws or traditions of a community. These may not be written rules, they may be unspoken, or they may be unconscious to us until some event brings them up into our consciousness. If we walk our dogs on the sacred ground, for example, or if we make a pained face when someone in the chorus hits a wrong note, we are behaving disrespectfully, although we may not realize it until it is pointed out to us. Respectful behavior is an assumption of most institutions, and we all agree pretty much about what's respectful and what isn't. When our behavior is pointed out to us, we feel shame, but if we are asked to identify it, how does that make you feel, as psychologists are famous for saying? We probably say bad. It made me feel bad when I did that. People almost never say, I feel ashamed of myself, because it sounds kind of childish. It's like a mother in a TV sitcom saying, aren't you ashamed of yourself that you did that? And the kid sort of looks down, puts his head down, says, no. So if you think about, if you've ever seen Masaccio's painting of the expulsion from Eden, where Adam and Eve are leaving the Garden of Eden, he has his head down and covers his face with his hands. Okay, so let's consider a student who misbehaves, disrespects teachers, and interferes with the education of the other students. I was such a child. I know it's hard to believe because I am so well behaved now, right? So this happened to me at the end of 5th grade. There were 2 5th and 2 6th grade classes. And I don't think it was a class for the dumb kids and the smart kids. I think it was pretty evenly divided. And the last day before summer vacation, we would have a kind of a modest promotion ritual of graduating into sixth grade. So the principal came in, who was really out of central casting, and once she made an announcement over the loudspeaker about a child who had neglected to open the door for her and step aside so that she could open the door for him. So her name was Gertrude Hafner, which just seems like something I made up, but that was really her name. So anyway, she read the names aloud, and we were all sitting there, and I think it was in alphabetical order. And she said, take your books out of your desk and go on to your 6th grade class. And she skipped over my name. And she read the name of everyone else in the class. And I thought, this is it. Enough shenanigans. I'm being either expelled or left back. And I'd never even heard of anyone being left back in 5th grade, but that's what I was thinking. And I almost wept. It was all I could do not to burst into tears. This is not the shame story I'm going to be telling you either. This is just something I remembered while I was writing this. Just give me a moment here. So, and it turned out they were just assigning me to the other class. Everyone graduated in their own class except for me, and I was moved over to the other class. And years later, I decided that was probably because it was an older, more experienced teacher who was better at handling impossible students like myself. So when I was writing my book about school shooting, I got very interested in shame because it seemed that was the principal motivating factor in most of these terrible tragedies. And so I began to read in that subject, and then I wrote another book, Beyond Bullying, which was basically about shame. And one of the things I came upon in this, and there it is, good work, is Nathanson's compass of shame. Donald Nathanson proposed this in 1992. And it shows the four dysfunctional ways that people deal with shame. I'm so nervous about this thing stopping working here. And what would I do without it? Okay. So this compass of shame is extremely useful in understanding dysfunctional behavior as a response to shame, as we'll see. And then I'll also talk about some more useful ways of responding to shame. So let's go back to the guy in the chorus who made a face when someone sang a note out of tune, which never happens, by the way. Or the person who was walking their dog. So if those people let's talk about the compass of shame for a moment. So I think it's useful to read this like a map. So we have a northern point and a southern point, and when I talk about an eastern point, that's going to be on my left and your right, and then the western part is going to be on my right and your left. Okay. So let's imagine how he'd respond to this. Had he used the eastern point, let's say, had he used attack other, which is the eastern point, right? Yeah, western point. Okay. Okay, so briefly, attack other is you say you hate the chorus, and you didn't want to be in it anyway. In the other direction, we have the attack self, and that's where you say, I'm just such a bad singer, I'm such a miserable person, and one thing leads to another, and you're just ready to do something awful. The southern point is called avoidance and distraction. And this guy who got kicked out of the chorus, he might say, I'm going to eat a pint of strawberry ice cream. That always makes me feel better. This is a mild description of a mild behavior. You can imagine more powerful distractions, right? that would cause more trouble. And then we have on the northern point withdrawal, which is the most extreme form of shame denial. And I use withdrawal to describe most of the school shootings. They were social outcasts, so they were not welcomed in their groups, and many of them were abused by their families. And so their withdrawal basically was literal. So they either killed themselves following their rampages, others arranged to be killed by law enforcement, or something that's referred to as suicide by cop, or they spent the rest of their lives in prison. Now, the act also satisfied some other needs in these teenagers. Vengeance on all the people who, not just the people who had bullied them, but also the people who were enjoying their lives and who were accepted by the group. High drama, which, as we remember being adolescents, most of us, I think, enjoyed high drama. And instant celebrity, if only for a short time. So we may ask now, what are the healthy ways of dealing with shame? If you're a Catholic and you can use confession in a useful way, I'm told this works. Yom Kippur is a sort of the yearly Jewish version of that. And that sometimes involves a process called tashlik, which is where you walk by a river and you take bread and you toss pieces of bread into the water. And the bread symbolizes your misbehavior or your shame. Restorative justice is something I came upon when I was doing research, and that's a system created by the Mennonites. It's extremely good, I think, and and they use it for criminal justice. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the person isn't punished or doesn't go to prison, but the key part of it is that the person who committed the crime apologizes and makes amends to the person who was hurt by it. And it's interesting that the older forms of dealing with shame had to do with confessing to a god, as in the case of Yom Kippur, or to a priest, but these more modern forms of it involve directly approaching the person who you've offended. So that's a huge difference. So restorative justice is one of those systems. Another form that I'm always impressed with is 12-step programs. And did we get that slide? I don't think we did, but that's okay. So there are two parts. There are two parts of the 12 steps that are about this. This is like background music. I love it. Thank you. Is that an apology? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I don't know if you're being serious about this. Okay. So, does anyone know what I'm talking about? The steps and the, yeah. Can anyone quote 8 and 9 for me? It's really important, right? It's a wonderful thing. We made a list of all persons who we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And it's just a shame that we can't all be part of a 12-step program. in a way, I know people who have benefited so much from having that group over the years and having someone they can respond to directly when something bad happens. Okay, so now we're going to move into the shame story. As Bryna mentioned, my father was an author, and he wrote over 80 books, some of which were very successful and appeared on bestseller lists and were made into movies. So not only was he my father, who was the default authority figure in my life, but he was also the authority on writing. And we were a very bookish family, and on Sundays we'd stay home and read the New York Times Sunday Book Review. It's also a very New York-y thing. And we see what book was on the cover, had the good review spot, and look at the bestseller list. One of the things I noticed when we did this was there was an ad by a company called The Vantage Press, which doesn't exist anymore. Is anybody familiar with The Vantage Press? Oh, yeah. Cool. So The Vantage Press drew my attention because the names of the books they advertised didn't sound like books. And I did a little research. I went back and looked at an old copy of the book review, and I found these names. So here's some of them. Sunday and Monday were called chicken days, right? Doesn't sound like a book. Dogs I have known. And this is my favorite. Letters I wish I'd mailed to the man who divorced me to marry a waitress. I might buy that and read it. So I asked my father about this, and he said, Johnny, it's a vanity press. People pay to get published. No real writer would do that. You must be paid for your writing. So the sage had spoken. For those, a small digression here is that in 1990 there was a class action, and the New York State Supreme Court ordered Vantage Press to pay $3.5 million in damages to 2,200 authors whom they had promised to publish their book and have an advertising campaign and so forth and so on, book tours, and had not delivered any of that stuff, except for that one ad in the Times which listed all 30 books that they were publishing at the moment in little tiny versions. Also interesting is that my father was blacklisted after he was convicted of contempt of Congress, and he couldn't get his work published. So he self-published the book he wrote when he got out of prison, which was Spartacus, which later became a popular film. So the context becomes important right there, right in front of me, because that was obviously not a shameful gesture, but a gesture about the suppression of free speech. And so it was a kind of a noble and heroic thing to do. So I became a novelist, but eventually gave up writing for a job with a regular salary. I felt a little bit defeated not to be able to support my family from my writing. A very small shame, a twinge of shame. But it was counteracted by a feeling of worthiness by my own sacrifice, which was giving up my first love, which was writing fiction, in order to support my family and survive. Then the dean of Yeshiva University, where I was hired to teach for the last 20 years, encouraged me to write as many scholarly books and articles as possible, as long as I did not self-publish them. So I thought, And so after, 20 years in the halls of academia, which were pretty, it was nice, it was fun. And this actually reminds me a lot of giving a lecture. So anyway, after that I retired and I came out here to this wonderful place and started writing fiction again. So I wrote 70 pages of a novel and an outline of the rest, a short outline of the rest, which is how you used to get a publishing contract in the old days, right? You get 70 pages, 100 pages, a couple of pages of what happens next. And so then I thought I would call my old agent. And I called them up at William Morris, which was now William Morris Endeavor. And he had died. He was gone. So I looked for literary agents on the net, and all of them appeared to be millennials, whose names I did not know, and who didn't look like they were in publishing either, which was, they didn't have glasses and sort of. And I sent them, and they said, don't send me 70 pages, send me 10 pages, and that's all I need. And I was sort of like, well, don't you want to know what happens for the rest of the book? And they sort of waffled, but they didn't. And the pivotal question became, how many followers do you have on Twitter? So while I have a very close friend who has 400,000 followers, I had 5. And 3 of them were my kids, so that hardly did it. So 'twas then, here's what I wrote. 'Twas then that the specter of self-publication appeared, tempting me with visions of a bound printed book available to all on Amazon. So I made a kind of mental list of my likes and dislikes about publishing. And what I liked about them, I realized, was I would get lunch at a fancy restaurant and they would pick up the tab. And what I liked less was awful covers that they thought would sell books, conservative editorial advice, and mostly a year-long wait, at least a year-long wait for publication due to antiquated merchandising routines and the idea that different people like different kinds of books in different months, and all kinds of strange myths of publishers. Not to mention returns, and returns is what happens when they can't sell the 3,000 books they've printed, so they give them back to the bookstores at a very small cost, and they appear on the bargain tables. So there's nothing worse, really, when you're a writer to come in to Barnes & Noble and see piles of your books on the bargain tables. Barnes & Noble still exists, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're going to, in my immutable prose. Like Moses wandering in the desert, I traversed the internet looking for my Mount Sinai. And then I wrote, and I'm not talking about the psychiatric unit. There were freelance, what I am talking about is looking for, the place where I'd received the 10 Commandments. So there were freelance cover artists as I roamed the internet, freelance cover artists, freelance editors, freelance publicists, audiobook artists for hire. So in other words, what had happened was when I wasn't looking, the publishing industry had turned into the music industry, right? So now you can get a hit by putting yourself on TikTok for 30 seconds or whatever it is. And publishing was attempting to do the same thing. I don't know if that's successfully or not. Successful for someone, obviously. So what did I have to lose if I self-published? Would I be considered an amateur, a dilettante, or a hobbyist? Might I never be reviewed or promoted or advertised? Would my book never appear in the window of a brick-and-mortar bookstore, assuming one still existed? So many years ago, my father had insisted that being a real writer, you must be paid for writing. But now I thought, what was a real writer? Was it a writer who insisted on being paid for his work? Or was it a writer driven by an uncontrollable urge to put his creations on paper? An enormous satisfaction at having done so. I came across a quote from someone named James Gifford. I have no idea who this person is. And he wrote, "The first rule of writing, or any other art, is to do it because it pleases you, and let everything else go. Maybe you'll be lucky, but most likely you'll never make enough money to mention your earnings without embarrassment." To that I say, amen. And now we will sing the closing hymn. Where's Bryna? Oh, okay. The closing hymn, 1021 in your hymnals, "Lean on Me," and you'll see the words on the screens there. So thank you all for listening to this ramble. Sunday. on the piano. Jim Tong conducting chorus. Bryna. Is there more? Oh, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yes, there is.
Closing words.
This is the
That was
time.
not the end.
This is time for congregational news. From UUC The Vote, which is an arm of the Social Justice Committee. You've probably received your California vote by mail ballot for March 5th's primary election. Proposition 1 will be on the ballot and asking you whether you want to reallocate local funds to build treatment facilities and housing for people with mental illness and substance use disorders and for the unhoused. It sounds like an easy yes, but hold on. It's not as clear as you might think. After today's service, Sue Kaspari will be on the patio with a handout you can take with you that breaks down Proposition 1 so you can make an informed vote. Get your coffee, say hello to your friends, then head over to the table and please get your questions answered. Now, I prepared this before I knew there would be any news because anybody who's been worship associate knows that news comes in about 4 minutes before the service. We are all familiar with the main committees here: worship, finance, care, etc. But do you know about the other groups that continue to make UUCOD a community? If I forget one, please forgive me. On the first Wednesday of the month, there's arts and crafts. On the second Wednesday of the month is a group for our over 80s, affectionately called the OFUs, and you can figure out what the F and the U stand for. There's Scrabble twice a month, the book group on the last Friday, and both a men's breakfast and a women's lunch or dinner, depending on the time of year. There's also the AV team, without whom our services would not stream. They need more people to learn and help out. Find a niche, get involved. You will be glad you did. And finally, I want to remind you, is Joan Elliott here? Did I see her walk in? Stand, please, Joan. Next Sunday is the celebration of life for Joan's partner, Gloria Kapp. It will be at 2:00. Gloria represented us so well over the years. Please, friends, come and honor her. And now if you'll join me as we extinguish the chalice. Please read along with me. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Helen Lewis, the author of Shame, Guilt, and Neurosis, which is not a great title for a book, wrote, "Most important for the healthy discharge of shame is good-humored laughter at the self and its relation to the sharer, the shamer. Normal shame is resolved through verbal means and through humor." So we want to thank you all for letting me tell my shame story with you, my confidants, my church family, and joke about it. We need one another. As you start the new week, I hope your life will be free of shame. But if there is nastiness in the world and you may be shamed, please see it for what it is. If it was something you say or did, make amends and forgive yourself. If it was unjustified, someone unburdening their own shame, forgive them. And please feel free to talk about it with people you love and trust, and joke about it. We are only here for a short time, so let us make the best of it. In the words of the Reverend Barbara Fast, bless everyone, no exceptions, and include yourselves. Thank you.